Good afternoon, people, and welcome back to the official topic talk. I just thought I'd like to touch back on a subject that I was talking about earlier, and that is knife crime. And I'd like to spend 10 minutes just having a quick chat about the topic of knife crimes and why we are talking about it. Knife crime is a particularly big issue in the news at the moment. This is following a number of recent knife attacks on people, particularly in London. Not only in London, but you've got it in Manchester, Liverpool. It seems to be rife all over the UK. After falling for 7 years, the amount of knife crime in England and Wales is rising again. Out of the 44 police forces across the areas, 42 recorded a rise in knife crime since 2011. Figures released in February showed the number of deaths as a result of knife crime in England and Wales last year was 285, the highest since records began in 1946. So as you can see there, people, there seems to be a lot more people not only using violence, but they're using weapons, and there's nothing more deadlier than the knife. Gun crime, I mean, that's just as bad. I mean, I don't understand why why the youths nowadays would even think to carry a knife or any weapon. Come to think of that, I mean, if you're going to carry a knife, you're obviously going to carry it to use it. You know, there's no reason why someone should carry a knife. It causes misery, and it also brings turmoil to families because they lose loved ones. In November 2018, there were reports that had been a rise in the number of children under 18 receiving treatment for knife wounds in England alone, with the number of young victims having increased by 86% in the last 4 years. The government has said that it is working to deal with the problem, but a lot of people are angry and say that the problem is not being dealt with effectively. I mean, how do you deal with the knife crime epidemic? Youths and youngsters are carrying knives as if it's, you know, as if it's a commodity nowadays. I mean, instead of having a can of Coke in their hand, you know, they've got a knife in their hand. I don't think enough is being done up and down the country to find out why the youngsters are carrying knives or any weapon, to think about that. Mostly associated with gangs, mainly because probably they get themselves into such a mess or such situations that they feel it's necessary to protect themselves by using a knife. But unfortunately, if they're going to carry it, they're going to use it. It doesn't take much to take a life. One stab and, you know, that's it, the life could be gone. They're saying that there's not enough things, situations, organisations that are not dealing with this epidemic properly. What is the right solution? How do you go about telling these youngsters not to carry a knife? How do you stop them from taking the knife out when they go out? Probably getting to the problem of why they're using it or carrying it in the first place, could be a start. Although the figures suggest that knife crime is on the increase, it is still relatively unusual for a violent incident to involve a knife, and rarer still for someone to need hospital treatment. I mean, I disagree with that statement. There's more teenagers and youngsters carrying knives now, 2022, than what they ever have done in previous years. Look at Manchester. Look at Liverpool. Look at Birmingham. Overall levels of violence, for example, including physical fights, have in fact fallen by about quarter of the size since 2013. Why has the amount of knife crime gone up? There is no one reason to explain this increase. Many people believe that those who carry knives are simply criminals, and that what is needed to stop this behaviour is more police officers on the streets. By saying that statement there, I mean putting more police officers on the streets. I think the budgeting for the emergency services at the moment are at stretching point. Now, to put more police officers on the street, that's gonna. They haven't got the budget, for the police force. What we got at the moment, they're stretched to their limits. Now, would it stop teenagers and youngsters carrying knives if there were more police officers on the street? I don't think it would. Probably the best way to deal with it is when these people are caught. They have the book slung at them. They get the top end of the sentences. Because when you carry a knife, it's premeditated. You're premeditating to use, some might say, a self-defense weapon. I can't see how anyone can explain a knife being self-defense. So it's premeditated. So therefore, the sentences given out should be the top end of the scale. Maybe the more people that get caught just by having a knife in their pocket, they should receive the maximum penalty available. The courts must see this and deal with it accordingly. In recent years, there has been a decrease in the number of police officers as there has not been as much money available from the government to pay for them. That's exactly what I've just said. The budget is already stretched at maximum. So to put more police officers on the street, the budget won't stretch for that. The UK's top police officer, Cassidy Dick, has said that she believes there is some link between falling police numbers and a rise in violent crime. I mean, you could put more police officers on the street, ain't necessarily going to stop all the violence. I blame it on teenagers and thinking it's an accessory, to carry a knife. But, until they get hurt with a knife themselves, I don't think it's going to prevent or stop them, from using a knife.
Yo, news round, it's Litty Light. I don't follow the fashion, I do my own thing. Don't ask about my passports, I wrote it. Mostly all over London, like when you've got a a neighborhood, there's a bond that you get with, like, naturally with people, and it's just that bond is hard to be broken. People might look in from the outside and think, oh, like a lot of crime and everything, but when you actually get like a actual first view from your eyes, you realize that it's not what it seems. There's more positivity than negativity. 10 MCs, one mic, yeah, I'm a spinning moon, 1 million cash in that. When I was younger, my brother was involved in gang activity, and he was stabbed, but luckily not killed. What I learned from that is if you go down that route, this can happen, and basically like a warning, I think. That kind of opened my eyes, because something like that, I always hear about it on the news, but then it's just happened in my eyes. They can't start a bar or end the bar without saying whoosh or boom bow bow. There's definitely a pressure with kids to carry a knife. I think one of the reasons is that they're scared, and there's also a peer pressure from, like, to look cool. A lot of the people that carry knives are just lost, and they just don't really know what they're doing, and I just say, you're a wimp. If you carry a knife, you're a wimp. Carrying knives is not cool at all. And I still get my grades up. My music is a way for me to communicate to everybody at once. It's all about unity. I'm not like a teacher, and I'm not going to say, like, literally don't do this and don't do that. But I just think that it's not easy to do stuff that's hard. Like, people always go for the easy options in life. Whereas if you work hard and you actually, like, you want it bad, you can do anything. God by my side. I just think that everyone needs to be more aware of what they're getting themselves into. You don't have to do anything that you're not sure about or you don't want to do.
See, and then the other point of view, you got rap music, and they seem to glamorize more crime than anything more within the lyrics of their songs. And these teenagers and youngsters, they pick up on that because they listen to this drill rap music, which glamorizes crime. It glamorizes things like stabbing and violence. And the more that the youngsters listen to the lyrics into this rap world, I mean, is it to blame? I don't know. You can't fully blame the parents. I mean, because you can't keep an eye on your teenage sons or daughters like 24 hours a day. Maybe if some of the parents would bring this to the attention, and let the youngsters and teenagers realise what can actually happen if somebody was involved in a violent dispute. It's so easy to pick a knife up and stab somebody and not realise about the consequences. It's not good when you lose a family member through a shooting or a stabbing or through any sort of violence. The boss of Thames Valley Police Chief Constable Francis Hobgood agrees with this, saying it was common sense that a reduction in the number of police officers was linked to knife crime. If you have got fewer people enforcing the law, able to respond when things happen, and investigating things, then of course it is going to have an impact on our ability to deal with issues like knife crime, he said. Totally agree. If they're on the lack of resources at the moment, I mean, it's going to be very hard to try and deal with the issues of people carrying knives, people getting stabbed, confrontations. So putting more police officers on the beat isn't going to be a cure. Government's known this for many, many years. But still they need to come up and find better ideas, to try and put a stop to all these gang stabbings and, gang crime has increased slowly but surely, but still the police and the government, they haven't got a solution. They've had many years to think about what the main solution is. He explained that in his 8 years as chief inspector, he has been required to make cuts of more than £100 million and had lost 1,000 officers and staff. Again, this is what I was saying a bit earlier on. Their budget is at stretching point. 1,000 officers. I mean, that's a lot of foot power on the street to lose. More money needs to be put in. The government needs to rethink about what their budget is for the year. They need to find this extra money so we can get these extra officers back out there on the beat. But earlier this week, Prime Minister Theresa May said there is no direct correlation between falling officer numbers and a rise in violent crime. Leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, said that Mrs May must start listening to police chiefs over the impact of cutting 21,000 officers, saying you cannot keep people safe on the cheap. Again, I agree. More money needs to be pumped into the police forces. 21,000 officers. That's a lot of manpower. Now, if these 21,000 officers were back on the streets, that'd be pushing towards aim, to stop all crimes, not just knife and gun crime, but all crimes. Some experts argue that often it is a fear of gangs and crime that leads to young people carrying knives because they believe it will help to keep them safe. Again, what's it come down to? If the police force can't keep teenagers safe, it's their job, it's what they get paid for, to keep us civilian people safe. If there isn't enough resources, then they need to find these resources. The trouble is that these weapons may then be used, which could make the number of violent incidents go up. In March 2018, Police Chief Cressida Dick told the Times newspaper that she believed arguments and peer pressure on social media sites can rev people up, making people angry and make street violence more likely. This I agree with. We all know that we all know what harm social media can cause. It only takes a teenager to be slagged off online over a keyboard through a monitor to instigate the teenager to get angry enough, to pick up a knife and go and sort that argument out with that person. So is social media a good thing? Some people say yes, some people say no. But again, it increases its chances of people falling out with people over the internet through something that's been said. Others say that young people get involved with gangs and knife crime because they lack opportunities in life. Again, this part could be down to parenting, it could be down to the teenagers listening to their parents, going to get a good education, get their education, come out of school and get yourself a decent job. half of these individuals, they haven't had the first chance in life. You know, there's many backgrounds and many situations that these teenagers are facing. Take, for example, if there was a teenager coming up through the care home system, they haven't got the guidance of their mum or their dad. So it'd be quite easy for them to fall into gangs' hands. So yeah, the upbringing of the child, I mean, plays a big part in it. They say there are too few services provided to help and support young people, including education, mental health services, and youth centres. They believe that improving these services would help cut the amount of violent crime. See, that's another situation, you know. Some of these teenagers, you know, they go say through the care home where they haven't got the full guidance of their parents, their mum and their dad. Again, they take to drugs, drop out of school, and as they go through their years, you know, mental health does and can play a great part. So again, I remember back in my day, there used to be loads of youth centres you can go to, like after school, and you know there'd be loads of activities, and that's a good way to take these teenagers off the streets. They say there are too few services provided to help and support young people, including education, mental health services, and youth centres. Many of these services have been reduced as a result of the government reducing the money available to spend on these services. Again, the government needs the budget within the budget each year, you know, to find the money to finance some of these organisations, not take them away. You know, so nowadays there's less things for youngsters to do after school. If they don't go to school, you know, there's no decent youth clubs anymore. You know, because government are taking them all away because of not having the finance. Something the government needs to start looking into, rebuilding back up the structure, you know, of these services that can be provided for these teenagers to keep them off the streets and to push them into educations. What are laws about carrying a knife? There are lots of different rules about carrying a knife, but the most part is it's illegal to carry a knife in public without a good reason. It is also illegal to use any knife in a threatening way. If you're found to be carrying a knife in the UK, there could be serious punishments. Could be serious punishments. Don't you think there has to be serious punishments? The law enforcement and the courts, they need to start realising they need to start giving out the top end of the sentencing scales within their guidelines to even stand a chance, you know, to stop these teenagers from reoffending. Once they get given a higher sentence and they realise they're not just getting slapped on the wrist anymore, you know, that might make them think twice. What is stop and search? One thing that you might have heard being talked about in relation to knife crime is something called stop and search. Good idea. As the name might suggest, stop and search is a police practice in which a police officer can stop a person briefly to check that they are not carrying any weapons or illegal items, for example, a knife. See, years ago they would have to have a reason to stop you, and an even greater sense to think, to search you. So they would have to have a valid reason to stop you and to search you. Well, the law's changed, so they don't have to have a reasonable excuse now to search you. They can stop you at any time you want, not give an excuse, and to search you. I think that move was great within the law. There are certain things that police are and aren't allowed to do during stop and search, and certain things they have to do. For example, show their credentials and tell the person what they suspect them of carrying. Over the last few years, the use of stop and search by police officers has declined. See, again, could we blame it on the authorities? Could we blame it on the police? There's been a major decline from 2009 to 2010. There was 1,400 stop and searches. To 2017 to 2018 was only 400,000. Sorry, 1.4 million stop and searches in 2009 to 2010, and a major decline. 2017 to 2018, there was only 400,000 stop and searches. Again, the police need to implement and to push forward and to have and give more stop and searches. The boss of Thames Valley Police, Chief Constable Francis Hobgood, has said that the use of stop and search in his police force had considerably dropped in the last few years, but that he thought it should be used more to deal with the issue of knife crime and young people carrying blades. Home Secretary Sajid Javid told the annual Police Superintendents Conference in September, if stop and search means that lives can be saved from the communities most affected, then of course it is a very good thing. But some people have been critical of stop and searches, as they say that ethnic minorities, especially young black men, are unfairly targeted. I mean, once again, you can't use the race card anymore. It don't matter what colour, creed, race, or age that you are. If the police suspect, or they know you've had a past, or they know that you've been arrested previously for carrying any sort of weapon, then yeah, I agree. They should stop and search, no matter what creed, colour, race, or age. What is being done about knife crime? Following the most recent attacks, Home Secretary Sajid Javid has called for knife crime to be treated like a disease. He has met with police bosses to look at ways to deal with the spread of violence. The Prime Minister has asked government officials to make dealings with the issue of knife crime a priority, and has said she would host a summit in the coming days to tackle it. This should have been done years ago. This should be on the agenda of every police force up and down the country. Mrs May also said the problem would require a whole of government effort in conjunction with the police, the wider public sector, and local communities. The UK's top police officer, Cressida Diggs, has said, now is the time for us all, the public in our communities across London, across the country, politicians, to say to ourselves, what else can be done? What can we do to prevent young people getting involved with knife crime? Manchester City captain Vincent Kompany has voiced his opinion to say that young people need the right amount of education and support at every level to help prevent the knife crime. Here we're going to watch a little video from Vincent Company saying education can help stop knife crime.
I've lost friends to knife crime, and it isn't an issue that's just going to go away because of repression, because of police action. Of course, we need to support the forces, but in reality, the whole aspect, even homelessness, is linked to prevention, and prevention often comes through education. It shocks me, but it doesn't surprise me.
In March 2018, it was announced that a series of adverts aimed at 10 to 21-year-olds, paid for by the government, would be on social media and digital channels to try and make young people more aware of the dangers of knife crime. Posters would also be put up in cities in England where knife crime is more common. Patrick Green, head of the Ben Kinsella Trust, a charity that works to tackle knife crime, said it is vitally important that young people understand the dangers associated with carrying a knife. Many charities and organisations continue to work hard to raise awareness of the dangers of knife crime, and along with all those working to tackle the issue, hope that this increase will soon be reversed.
When bad things happen, it's totally normal to feel upset and worried. To think things like, why did this happen? Could this happen to me? Could this happen to my family and friends? Am I safe? It can be useful to remember that sometimes worrying events are in the news because they don't happen very often, and that it's very unlikely that you or anyone you know will be affected by them. So what should you do if you're feeling sad and anxious? Talk about it. You could speak to your parents, a teacher, or an adult you can trust. They can reassure you and help you feel better. And remember, when things like this happen, most people are there to help.